Greetings. This is Paul the Poke from PaulthePoke.com. This time, I'd like to welcome everybody to This Week in Prophecy. Some of the things we're going to be covering this week include a emerging Arab-Israeli air defense system, also some things that are taking place in the seas, in the Mediterranean and Red Seas. We're starting to see the ripple effects from a food cost standpoint throughout parts of the Middle East and Europe as a result of the Russia invasion of Ukraine. We're going to take a look at the text in Revelation 6 in regards to a time when hyperinflation will be a factor, at the onset of the tribulation, where it'll cost a day's wage just to eat. We're going to look at some of the ripple effects of that inside of Israel as it affects egg prices and grain prices. Also, Russia making some moves in the economic world by tying the ruble to the price of gold. So gold is now backing the ruble, or on the verge of backing the ruble. We're going to talk about that and the ramifications of that, how it affects the cost of gold, and also the cost of oil and gas. And essentially, before we get in depth on this, the reality of it is that the ruble is about back to pre-invasion levels. And the thought is that the United States would break and the West would break the ruble with sanctions. And it's not quite turning out the way they thought. And Putin's made his own move, threatening to cut off all gas exports to Germany and to Europe. And then just how this is affecting the cost of food in Germany. So we're going to jump right in. And again, we're going to take a look here at the map. We got Jerusalem here in the west. We're going to talk about Egypt, the UAE, Jordan, and a few others. So this happened earlier in the week. I believe this is like March 31st. This is from allisraelnews.com. Emerging Arab-Israeli air defense alliance aimed at countering Iranian aggression is a burgeoning Middle East version of NATO. And this happened this week at the Negev Summit in Israel, where foreign ministers of Israel, the United States, Egypt, Morocco, and the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain convened to discuss regional peace and security. We all love this phrase nowadays. Peace and security. It's about peace and security. That's when the Apostle Paul said we need to get nervous. And essentially, military coordination with friendly Arab states as a new strategic asset against emerging Iranian danger. Specifically, they talk a little bit about the Iranian-backed Houthis, how they are launching missiles all across the Arabian Peninsula. So you do have a group of nations getting together to protect themselves against Iran. And then also Operation Intrinsic Defender was a naval exercise. American-Israeli drills covers diverse challenges such as naval combat vessel protection, naval firing, sabotage and neutralization, and naval mines. That was something that was done as a joint exercise this week in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea. So again, we'll go back to our map. You can get a look. So had some things take place here in the Med, in the Red Sea. And again, we had the countries of the United States, Egypt, Morocco, the UAE, and Bahrain. So Egypt, Morocco is clear over here. Egypt, Morocco in the west, Egypt, UAE, and Bahrain right there. So looking to align themselves with each other and protect against Iran. So we'll go from there to take a look at, scroll to the north, and we'll take a look at Revelation 6, verse 6. And I know this has been a theme we've been talking about for some time. Uh, and I heard what seemed to be a voice in the midst of the four living creatures saying, a quart of wheat for a denarius, 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, and do not harm the oil and wine. So you have, essentially the amount of grain it would take to make loaves of bread for a day's wage. Do not harm the oil and wine. Well, we're not harming it, but we're darn sure restricting the flow of it and keeping people from getting it. Before we get to that, we're going to take a look at starting to see some effects of the war in Israel. And this is from the Times of Israel. Israel scrambles for solutions as Ukraine war chokes off egg, wheat imports. And, the big thing with eggs right now, we got Passover coming up. So Israelis, Jews need eggs. According to the article, Israelis eat an average of 240 eggs a year, or about 20 a month. On Passover, with many other foods prohibited by religious and state fiat, egg consumption goes up by 10% to 22 eggs per person. Between the Seder and a plethora of recipes that use eggs as a leavening agent, it's not uncommon for families to go through multiple dozens of incredible edible protein over the holiday. So Ukraine makes up about 30% of the 100 million eggs imported to Israel annually. Now, the agriculture ministry in Israel has vowed to cut this off, and they are looking to import eggs from Poland and Bulgaria to make up for the shortfall. So, 4 million eggs each month to supermarkets. That's a lot of eggs. And this is Ohana. This is Yehuda Ohana of Har Meron Eggs sorting station in the north. Says, we felt the strain with the avian flu in November. Outbreak in northern Israel affected some 20 coops with about 1 million hens. Prices were pretty cheap comparatively, and they're pretty good eggs. Talking about things in northern Israel. Russia invaded and imports stopped completely. Trying to bridge the gap since then, there's not a lot I can do. So they're looking at other options in Spain and Italy, but higher prices and fewer eggs to customers. So there's one example, eggs coming out of Ukraine, in that part of the world, done. Ukraine grain drain is Israel's flour mills, which have long imported grain from Russia and Ukraine, are also reeling from the abrupt end of imports from war-torn Ukraine. And this is from Shalom Hatuka of Shintraco, an Israeli grain importer that purchases grain for humans and animal consumption, some 600,000 tons each year. And he says it's all over. It's done. We're finished getting grain from Ukraine. It's destroyed country. It's a destroyed country. Ports and lands were so deeply ruined. The Mariupol port isn't relevant any longer. They destroyed all the port infrastructure. And so let's take a look at, those of you not familiar with that. That is this port right here. Azov Sea of Azov. Mariupol is what we're talking about. And the ports are destroyed. The city's destroyed. If you've seen any of the video, I mean, it's just concrete's been powdered. Everything's been destroyed. It's very graphic. People are laying in the streets dead. Apartment complexes are just obliterated. I mean, the whole thing it's an awful war zone. And so it's like they can't, even if they could get the grains to the ports are destroyed to the point they can't distribute anything out of this part of the world. And so if we back this out, you can see how this works. Grains come down through the Black Sea, through the Bosphorus Straits, the Dardanelles Straits, and into Israel. Well, there's no grain coming from here anymore. That is over. Everything's been destroyed. Ukraine was the 6th largest exporter of wheat in the world, 10% share of the market, shipping 20 million tons of wheat and meslin, according to the UN. Also one of the world's top exporters of barley and sunflower seeds. So, if you go back to Revelation 6, there are two of the elements mentioned, wheat and barley. It's going to cost a day's wage to get enough wheat and barley for a loaf of bread. And this has been going on for 40 years. Israel grain trader has been buying from Russia and Ukraine. They'd stocked up, but it's pretty much over once the war started. Other alternative sources, Hungary and Moldova, were holding on to their own supplies, so they're not exporting. And grain prices from the U.S. and Canada are much higher. In Romania, for example, prices are up 150% already. So Israel imports 60 to 70% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine, much of the rest from Hungary and Romania, and a small percentage from the United States and Canada. And that's per a CEO of Israeli flour mills. Brought in some extra flour from Canada and Estonia. It's not that simple. Everyone's working a little harder to find wheat right now. It's an effort. And prices have gone from $380 a ton to $550 to $600 per ton. So what? 320 up about 67%, 70% or so. And this is just getting started in April, and here we are a little over a month into the conflict. And it's estimated there's enough flour to last through June. And then that's after months of difficulty with sourcing grain, starting with the pandemic that created an increase in shipping and energy prices. Things are going up is the point. And that's in Israel. And then we had this come out this week with Russia. Gold-backed ruble could be a game changer. And this is from RT, Russia Times. And this is an article they have written. Bank of Russia has resumed gold purchases this week, but more importantly, the regulator is doing so at a fixed price of 5,000 rubles or $59 per 1 gram between March 28th and June 30th, raising the possibility of returning to the gold standard. So a Russian currency backed in gold is what looks like being set up to take place here. And Putin's already starting to promise on some of this delivery. It's like, if you buy from Russia, you will buy things in rubles. And he's looking to fix commodity, gold, oil, gas prices. And if you're going to buy Russian stuff, you're going to use our currency, the ruble. The Bank of Russia has both linked the ruble and gold, and it essentially has set a floor price for the ruble in terms of the U.S. dollar. So the thinking is that the ruble will not be going down anymore against the dollar. We'll take a look at a chart of the ruble, and it's almost regained its value as a pre-invasion of Ukraine. So it has been effective for Russia to do this. So now the ruble has a floor to the US dollars in terms of gold, but gold also has a floor, so to speak, because 5,000 rubles per gram is 155,500 rubles per troy ounce. Gold price of around $1,940. So they've tied it, and their hope is that this will mess up the paper market in the United States. And then if they do, paper manipulations of the gold market will be out in the open. Well, many people have speculated for quite some time that the United States and commodity traders, gold traders, silver traders manipulate the price of the precious metals with paper contracts. And anybody who knows, there is a shortage of those two precious metals. And if the ruble continues to strengthen, for example, due to demand created by obligatory energy payments in rubles, there will also be reflected in a stronger gold price. And if you've been watching the gold markets, that's slowly been creeping up over the last quarter. So what does it mean for oil? Russia is the world's largest natural gas exporter and the world's third largest oil exporter. And Putin is demanding that foreign buyers, importers of Russian gas, must pay for this natural gas using rubles. This immediately links the price of natural gas to rubles, and because of the fixed link to the gold price. So Russian natural gas is now linked via the ruble to gold. Same can now be done with Russian oil. If Russia begins to demand payment for oil export with rubles, there will be an immediate indirect peg to gold. Same thing again. If you follow it, price of oil to rubles to gold is the idea. And it can be applied to any commodity. So grain, for example. What does it mean for the price of gold? Well, Russia's buying gold like crazy to back all of this, which should create more demand. Bank of Russia and the Kremlin are fundamentally altering the entire working assumption of the global trade system while accelerating change in the global monetary system. This wall of buyers in search of physical gold to pay for real commodities could certainly torpedo and blow up the paper gold markets of the LBMA and the COMEX, and that would be United States paper, how they trade gold and paper in the U.S. That's the thing that's always been scary about that. If everybody would all of a sudden demand physical delivery of precious metals, there's just not enough gold and there's not enough silver to make that happen. I want to say I've seen there are 30 times the number of contracts per actual physical asset. I mean, it's crazy what would happen. Hey, I want my gold. Hey, I want my silver. Everybody would do that. Prices would explode like crazy. And some people wonder if that's what Russia's trying to do. Now, also, again, it puts a floor under all these things because Russia's currency would be backed in a real physical commodity, and it would, in theory, drive up the purchasing power of the ruble, would create inflation to other countries trying to purchase these assets because there would be a stronger currency backed in a stronger price of a commodity, whether it be gold, oil, natural gas, wheat, whatever is the idea. So what does it mean? Speculation. Nobody knows for sure. Currently, since 1971, the global reserve status of the U.S. dollar has been underpinned by oil. The petrodollar has been possible due to both the world's continued use of U.S. dollars to trade oil and the USA's ability to prevent any competitor to the U.S. dollar. And that's what a lot of these countries are trying to do. They are trying to break down the rule of the dollar and to break the dollar. That's what they're after. Ramifications, nobody knows. But know this is taking place. Know you have central banks purchasing gold like crazy. Russia's doing it. China's doing it. India's doing it. And they're wanting the physical commodity, which at some point, and with these folks getting physical delivery, they're creating a shortage because they're hanging on to it. This stuff's going up. Now, the question is how and when and what does that look like, and how it affects the economy. I mean, there are all kinds of crazy things taking place right now economically in this world with supply shortages, Russia making the decision to back their currency, potentially back their currency in gold, would have some real value behind it. So and currently the United States dollar, well, that's backed by the good word of the United States government. That should make everybody feel wonderful. So, and then again, Russia, this is from the BBC. Russia says it won't cut off gas supplies yet in ruble payment row. Russia said it will not cut off gas exports to Europe yet in a standoff over its demand to be paid in rubles. Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree on Thursday stating buyers must pay in rubles through Russian bank accounts from Friday, and this would start April 1st. Would not affect shipments which were already paid for, with payments for deliveries after April 1st due in mid-April at the earliest. And Russia is seeking to shore up the ruble as Western sanctions bite. I don't know that Western sanctions are biting that hard because their currency is rebounding. There'll be some whipsaw action in the currency market because of this, no doubt. We've seen that. And, if it ever gets back to levels to where it was before, which would be somewhere in this area, which they're there on the cusp now. And if it breaks back above that and breaks this trend, that puppy is going up a long ways. And it's got some work to do. But the way it stands right now, 1 ruble is worth 1.2 pennies. But just imagine if it gets to, say, 3 pennies or 4 pennies. I mean, that's like a 3-fold increase in the power of the Russian ruble. That would be a very big deal economically to this planet. The EU said it was talking to energy companies about how to pay for gas. The Director General of the European Commission Energy Directorate tweeted that the EU was working closely with member states and operators to establish a common approach on currency payments for gas contracts with Russia. Well, Vlad has said you will pay for this in rubles or you will not get any gas. And we know from last week, Germany is out of gas. And they have closed off the spigot if you're not going to pay in rubles. It's really straightforward. They got some problems. Russia supplies the European Union with about 40% of its gas and a third of its oil imports, which are mainly paid for in euros and dollars. The EU has no easy substitutes if supplies are disrupted, but at the same time, Russia is making 400 million or 340 million pounds per day from gas sales to the bloc, and it has very few options for rerouting this supply to other markets. On Wednesday, Germany and Austria took the first steps toward gas rationing. Germany urged consumers and companies to reduce consumption in anticipation of possible shortages, while Austria said it was tightening its monitoring of the gas market. Well, again, a week ago, Germany said, we're out. We have none in storage. And then this week, Putin issued a decree requiring foreign buyers of Russian gas to open ruble accounts from Friday or else being cut off. And again, that ruble price will be tied to potentially spot price of gold. So you can see how gas or wheat or oil is about to get more expensive, and there's a shortage of it. I mean, so you have like 3 or 4 variables that can drive the price of oil and gas up quite high, even more so than what they're experiencing now in Europe. So UK has imposed sanctions on Gazprom Bank, which Gazprom is UK's far west from Gazprom, which you don't fully understand that. Germany's the one who's going to feel the pinch from Gazprom shutting off their lines. And it says westbound flows of Russian gas via major routes were steady on Friday, allegedly. Now you better have rubles, or that will get cut off. So, and then we'll close with this one. And we talked about Germany. German retailers to increase food prices by 20 to 50% on Monday. That would be tomorrow, so April 4th. German retail chains to increase food prices by 20 to 50% on Monday. And this is from a tweet. We will soon be able to see the impact of the war reflected in price labels across all supermarkets. And the reason this caught my eye, popular retail chains such as Aldi. We have Aldi grocery stores here in the United States, and they are German owned. And this is what's going on in Germany with Aldi, as well as Edeka, and Globus announced that they would be forced to raise their prices. At Aldi, meat and butter will be, quote, significantly more expensive Monday due to price hikes from its suppliers. Translated, Aldi, for example, expects increases of 20 to 50% in its purchase prices in the coming weeks. Already on Monday, meat, sausage, and butter are to become significantly more expensive at Aldi Nord. There is the tweet showing the cost of, I know what butter is. Schnitzel, I'm not even going to try. Tomato, I can figure that one out. Butter, gherk. Oh, like a gherkin, cucumber. How about that? There we go. Showing some linguistic skills here. I guess that'd be a sandwich on a piece of bread. So, since the start of the Ukraine war, there have been jumps in prices that we have not experienced before. Spokesperson for Aldi Nord announced on Friday. And Aldi raised the prices of about 160 items, and a week later, 20 more items became more expensive. Other supermarket brands followed suit quickly. So we're already starting to see prices increase. We're about a little over a month into the conflict. You got ports completely destroyed coming out of Ukraine. So even if they were able to deliver wheat, grains, eggs, cooking oils, etc., to the ports are destroyed. So ships can't get in to pick it up. The infrastructure, the roads are being bombed. You got people fighting, and we got just that fact alone is a big enough problem. And, again, to back this up, the grain coming out of Ukraine and Russia. Now, Russia is going to probably take up the slack and start exporting grains to North Africa, the Arabian Peninsula, to some of these countries. Israel is going to probably need to go there. And then you got some of these countries, again, shutting in exports, and they're keeping them for themselves. But you got the Middle East, the Arabian Peninsula, Iran, and some of these other countries. India gets some of its grain from this part of the world as well. Prices are going up in that part of the world, and then we have a gold-backed ruble. We don't know what that's going to do. So we got a lot of loose ends we need to keep our eyes on. Is this the time, leading into hyperinflation, which Revelation 6 talks about? I don't know the answer to that, but you're seeing increasingly more stress on the food supply chains, on the cost, economic mechanisms that allow for the payment and delivery of these goods. All of these things are being affected, and I think it's something we need to pay very close attention to. It's the world we're living in. And again, am I saying that this is Revelation 6 is imminent? No, I'm not, but I'm saying we got lots of dominoes being set into place, lots of changes to lots of mechanisms, and it's worth watching. So appreciate you guys taking the time and following this evening. Wish everybody the best, and I'll catch you next week. Also, catch you with some other stuff that happens during the week at PaulthePoke.com. You guys have a great evening. Appreciate you following along. Take care. Bye.